right, good evening and welcome or welcome back. So tonight I am in the shop working on the NegativeG build, and hopefully you've seen the first couple videos I did on this particular rig, but if not, I'll give you a quick rundown. So this is a NegativeG model TC V-1.5, and what the NegativeG is they build a chassis kit that when combined with a donor RTR truck such as a TRX4 Sport, which will be the donor truck in my particular instance, you can end up with everything you need to make a comp ready rig. So basically it's got a nice carbon fiber chassis, 3D printed plastics, a few aluminum bits and whatnot, and you just add the axles, shocks, electronics of your choice. Or you can basically just take everything off of your donor rig and pretty much swap it straight over, and anything that doesn't swap over from it is included in the kit for the most part. There may be exceptions, but I think pretty much anything. If you had a TRX4 Sport, all you would need is your donor truck, your NegativeG chassis kit, and you would have everything you need to turn that into a perfectly good comp rig. So I'm just going to start off going over what I've done since the last video. Let's just start at the front here. So the last video, I showed this G13 Three Brothers servo, and this guy's a monster. I think I wanted to say it's 800 ounce-inches of torque at like 12 volts, and I will be running this on 3S direct power, so that's about where it should be. And as far as I know, they no longer make this one. I hate to say it's an older servo because I've only had it a couple of years and it is actually brand new. I've just been hoarding it. But I think they've pretty much replaced it with what they're calling the G13 Pro. I think the specs are similar, but don't quote me on that. Anyhow, I believe that is the replacement for it, and I don't think this one is actually made anymore. But along with that, I've got a Vanquish servo horn, which is kind of my go-to servo horn that I like to use, and it's just a standard, 25 tooth, and this is a 20 millimeter. This is actually the servo horn right here. So it is a 20 millimeter servo horn, and I have this guy on several rigs, and it pretty much fits everything that I have, and never had a problem with one. It's like a clamping design, so you have these two little screws on the side that clamp that guy together, if you can see in there. Okay, so on to motor and speed control. So hiding in there, you can see I've got the 2023 Holmes Team Spec Revolver Purple. And I bought this guy when they first come out, and I've just kind of been hoarding it for the right project, and I think this is the right project. So that's the motor, and that is a 2250 kV, if I didn't say that. And then for speed control, this is the Holmes Crawlmaster Mini V3. I have a V2 on one of my other trucks, and it came as a bare board and a kit, and you solder it all together, whereas this V3 came as an RTR. I think you can get it as a kit. I'm not sure. I'm not sure why I got the RTR. I think it's just what was available at the time. Again, I bought it a while back. But yeah, Crawlmaster Mini V3, and one of the super nice things about this is it actually comes with the power plug for the direct power servo. Usually I have to go and solder that apart, solder the plug for that onto my battery connector. I did not have to do that at this time. And so yeah, that's super nice because it's already got the power for my servo, and I don't have to go and solder that in. So the last piece of the electronics puzzle is a FlySky receiver, and this is just a 3-channel receiver that is for my FlySky GT3B. I've got a couple of those old GT3Bs that have been hacked to 8 channels, and they are an older design radio, but I've had 0 problems with them, and so until they give me trouble, I don't see any reason to replace them. Nice thing about them is that these receivers are super cheap. I mean, these things are like $8-9 for a 3-channel receiver, so it's kind of hard to beat. And I've got receivers that go all the way up to 8 channels. My TRX4 Blazer actually uses all 8 channels with, lights and shifting servos and all that stuff. This one, only 3. And so I will throw out there that this wiring is completely temporary. it's a total mess. I know that. I just threw everything in there to test it out. And once I've decided that everything's exactly where I want it, then I will go through, shorten wires, solder everything together, find a way to loom it up, and I'll make it look real nice, because that's just not going to fly for me. All right, so that's about it for electronics. And I think about the only other thing that I have done since the last video is drive shafts. I think when I was installing or assembling the chassis, I was completely unable to find anybody that had drive shafts in stock. So what I ended up with is a set of these Meus Racing, or I've heard people call them Meus Racing and all kinds of things. I'm pretty sure it's Meus Racing. So these Meus Racing, they're just an aluminum drive shaft, and they look super similar to the prop shaft that comes in the NegativeG kit. I don't think they're exactly the same, but they are about as close as you can get, other than being a different color. And I think I just got the raw aluminum because that's what was available. And I don't remember the exact sizes that I measured out the drive shafts to. I was going to try to find just stock TRX4 drive shafts, but I had heard that the back one could use to be a little bit longer, so I just went ahead and measured and bought custom drive shafts. And what I ended up with on the front one is going to be a 94 to 118 millimeter. And then on the back, I got their 104 to 136 millimeter. And again, I don't remember the exact measurements of what my shafts ended up being or what they needed to be, but they fell within those parameters, so that's what I ended up with. Beyond that, I don't think I've really done anything else. I may have changed around the steering links a little bit once I got the servo installed. I think I did switch up. I believe I had a different end on this side, like an offset end, and I switched that stuff around, played with that a little bit to get everything to clear and operate smoothly. I installed body posts, and I'll probably talk about that later. Those are just a Traxxas body post kit. I showed the part number and everything probably in the first video. One of the things NegativeG does is they give you these rubber bands, and it's kind of interesting. On the back of this chassis, you've got all these little holes here, and you can move these screws around to adjust the tension of the rubber bands. And that's all they're for, as far as I know, is to hold those rubber bands. So I installed those on there. I'm going to play with that some. I got them set up, I think, fairly loose, but I think that's probably going to be where I'm going to start. And then for the front, I didn't really play around with the rubber bands, but I do have hair bands on there. And we can see those guys right there. But yeah, I got just black hair bands. They kind of disappear. And I don't even know if I'm going to keep them on there. I might play around with them a little bit. I'll try it without it and just see what works. And that's all about tuning. That's a subject for a whole nother day. So I think that is about all I've done since the last video on the chassis. And the main thing I believe I want to talk about tonight is wheels and tires, and maybe body, see what kind of time I got. So what I ended up with, wheels and tires, I've actually got one completely assembled here because I was excited to see how they look. But what these are a wheel from Locked Up RC, and the tires are a Team Ottsix Voodoo KLR V2. And the reason I went with the KLRs is I've heard a lot of the comp guys really like these over the years. I've been wanting to try them, but I just I never really was into the, I guess, non-scale tires. I like licensed scale tires. So a lot of my other trucks are running, some form of like a BF Goodrich, Rock Beast, or something like that. However, with this truck, the whole scale realism thing is kind of out the window to begin with. So it didn't really matter that much. I just wanted a really good performing tire. And so I decided to go ahead and move on to a non-licensed comp style tire. And the Voodoo KLR, like I said, that's one that I've heard a lot of good things about. And compared to a couple of the other ones that were at the top of my list, I was looking at the J Concepts Ruptures. I know a lot of people really like those nowadays. I was looking at the Vanquish, what are they called? The VXT2s, which are actually what's on this truck up here in the corner. Now, the reason that I did not go with the VXT2s, or one of the reasons, is that they're huge. So this Voodoo KLR V2 fits within, I think it's actually measured at 4.7 or advertised as 4.7, but it fits within the 4.75 limit for a Comp 2 legal tire. Whereas I can tell you those Vanquish tires are definitely larger than 4.75, so they would not be legal. And, you know, a lot of the comps around me, I think they're just kind of, you know, loosey-goosey to the rules. I don't think that, you know, most of them are a little bit, they're not real official, I guess, style comps, so it probably wouldn't be an issue. But for the ones where they are actually sticking to, you know, SORCA Class 2 rules, I want this truck to absolutely fit within the rule book. So that is why, or one of the reasons why I chose that particular tire. Now, the wheels are from Locked Up RC. The model of the wheel is the Trail Ready, and it's just kind of a sort of a D window design. And these are just a super nice billet aluminum wheel, double bead lock, obviously. And there's a couple things of note about this that are super interesting. And so I've got one that I've not put together yet, and I'll go over some of that stuff. But they're just a super, super nice machined wheel. And what they do is they offer what they call, I think they call it their discount bundler package. So you go through, you pick out the wheels design that you like, you pick out the beadlock design that you like, and they've got, I don't even know how many different wheel and beadlock designs they have, but there's a lot. And you can get them in all different colors. You choose the color of your wheel, the color of the beadlock, the styles, you choose your hardware, and you can choose the color of the hardware. These particular ones, I went with black hardware. You can get black, you can get stainless, gold. I think you can get some weird rainbow kind of stuff. But there's several different options there. You also, or at least I, get this tool right here. If you go out and you buy a set of these wheels, you want to get this tool because it's about the only thing I think that we'll get down in here to install these little beadlock screws. So you definitely want to get this tool. It's not part of the kit, but you do get that from Locked Up RC, and it's, I don't know, $7, $8. I don't remember what it was, but it's worth having for sure. So put that one aside for the moment. I have one here that's still unassembled. So this is what they look like when they come out of the package. And this is your base wheel. Like I said, it's just, this is the Trail Ready D-window style wheel. And it has the back beadlock rings just kind of held on with one screw there. And you have 6 screws in back. And even though it looks like you've got, I don't know, 30 or whatever screws in the front, you actually only have 6 screws that hold this beadlock on. So what you have, and this does not come, I've started putting it together. It doesn't come like this. It comes with just a beadlock and a bag of these little bolts. But for illustration purposes, I've gone ahead and started putting it together. And as you can see, hopefully, there are 6 holes there that you can see through. So there's 6 holes there that are not threaded, and the rest of them are. So what you do is you go ahead and you install screws in all the threaded holes, and then on the wheel itself, you've got, let's see if this will focus in here. So you've got like a threaded hole right there, and then you've got 3 larger holes, a threaded hole, 3 larger holes, etc., all the way around. And so the way this works is that once you get all your screws in here, you just take one of the non-threaded holes on the beadlock and you line it up with a threaded hole on the wheel. And if I can do this, here's a threaded hole. And then it just drops together like that. And so all those little studs, you know, whatever you call beadlock bolts, just fit down in these oversized non-threaded holes. So you don't have to sit and, you know, screw 30 different screws together to put these beadlocks on. It's just 6 on both sides. So these are super easy to put together. They don't have the inner locking ring like a lot of other wheels do, which, you know, I don't have anything against those. I really never had an issue with them, but I think these are a little bit easier to put together without that ring. It's just one less thing to try to hold in place. And the nice thing about these, if you see this big groove that they've got machined in here, these things, when you I've tried, like I said, I've had the other ones I've had a couple different tires on, and I know some people have problems with certain brands of tires. I found that these will pretty much fit anything, and the bead sits down inside there and it locks in real good. There's almost no chance of pulling a bead on one of these without ripping the entire tire apart. That's the wheel package. So you choose your wheel, your beadlock ring, your hardware, all that stuff, and then you can also choose your hubs. These are an SLW, Vanquish SLW compatible hub, so you can actually buy their hubs. Or I actually had a set of SSD hubs that are actually a scale brake rotor. I had these for another project, ended up not using them, and these are an SLW compatible hub from SSD. The big difference is that the Vanquish uses like a 440 standard screw, where these are metric. I like to keep everything metric just because all my spare bolts and everything are metric. Now on the tires and foams, like I said, did go with the Team Ottsix tires, and these are kind of interesting. They've got this like ribbing in here that I guess is supposed to help with, sidewall flex. I think it's supposed to give you the flex up and down, but not so much side to side. It's supposed to be better for side hilling, I think is what I read. Don't know, can't prove that, haven't tried them yet. The foams that I used are the Team Ottsix, and where's the package? Somewhere, I got the package for that. These are the Team Ottsix Halo Air Down series foams. And they have the Air Down and they have the Ultra Air Down. And on their website, they say for rigs under 7 pounds to use an Air Down in the rear and an Ultra Air Down in the front. So I kind of assume that means, at least I always run a softer foam in the front. So I took that to mean that the Ultra Air Down is the softer. But what I find interesting is that looking at these, I kind of would have thought it was the opposite. What you have for your outer foam is kind of this, what appears to be like shop vac filter media. I don't know what else to call it, but that's what it looks like. That's what it reminds me of. And then you've got your closed cell inner, pretty much like any other dual stage foam. And then it kind of, instead of just wrapping around the outside of the closed cell, this filter media wraps around, the sidewalls. And so it's kind of a different design. I can't really say I've ever seen anything like that, so I'm kind of excited to try these out and see how they work. But as I was saying, this is the Air Down, and the Air Down has a thicker outer foam and a thinner inner foam. Now I would have thought that having the soft part larger or thicker would make that the softer foam, but that doesn't seem to be the case, because the other ones, this is actually thinner and this is bigger around. So I would think that the Ultra Air Downs would actually be a firmer foam, but I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm just gonna have to get them together, try them out, and see what works. So take that for what it is. I have no idea what I'm talking about there. If anybody has used these before and is more familiar with them than I am, I would love to hear your opinion on these and straighten me out if I'm completely wrong. I will tell you I've actually put the other three together already, and these are a complete pain. So what you got to do is jam those in there and then try to get them as even from side to side as you can. You can see how much wider they are than the tires. But try to get them, even as much as you can from side to side, and they'll kind of, bow around like that, and then you can put your inners in. And it's kind of a pain to keep it all in place while you're trying to get those in there without it moving around. Yeah, I don't know. These are not the easiest foams to install, but I think they're going to work well. And one thing I discovered is that these seem to be directional, which is fine. I don't know which direction they're supposed to go. It's not marked on the sidewall as being directional, but they all have a directional kind of a pattern. And the one thing that I found interesting is that, let's see if this is the one. So I always like to have any tire that has your little paint dot for your, that has your, rubber compound. They always put this little paint dots. This is their red comp spec compound or whatever. I always put the dot on the inside just because I don't want to look at the dot. And I've discovered that if I do that on this particular tire, so I've got the black wall out on both sides, then I end up with two different patterns, or the pattern going two different directions. So I'm going to have to, I guess, put the red dot on the outside, because having one tire with the pattern backwards is not going to play nice with my OCD. And I'll have to figure out how to get that paint dot off of there. I'll take some brake clean to it or something. I don't know. But just something to note, if you're putting these together, they do seem to be directional. So just something to take into consideration. So the last part of this puzzle is, I know there's a lot of people, there's controversy. Do you vent? Do you not vent? I vent everything. I don't really plan on running these in water. If I'm planning on running in water, I usually use like a more of a single stage foam. So I'm not too worried about these getting waterlogged or anything like that. But the way I vent, I know a lot of people use like a leather punch or something like that. I just take and I cut a hole between the treads right there, and I just use a set of, in here somewhere, I just use a set of Lexan body scissors, and I just squeeze that together and make like a little diamond, and that's all it is. But I do vent all my tires. Again, I know there's some controversy around it, but I have found that they definitely 100% perform better. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and finish up this last tire, and then I'm going to throw them on the truck so we can see what they look like. Before I get these all finished, I just want to show a couple things while I'm in the process here. I was talking about that groove that the bead fits down inside these. You can see that groove pretty much holds that entire bead, and it's pretty much fits flush there. And super nice thing about these is that you can go ahead and line up your beadlock ring. I got it on the first shot. And speaking of lining up the beadlock ring, there are a couple different ways that, depending on how you spin this, it'll either line up these little nubs with the spokes inside of the wheel, or they'll be kind of offset, and I definitely want them lined up. But basically that's all there is to it. You see, you just drop that in there, and then what's really cool is, grab one of these little scale bolts here. Pretty much when you get the first scale bolt that's actually goes into the threads, like the first functional bolt, then this ring will sit so flat on here that you don't have to worry about this bead coming out while you're fiddling around trying to get the rest of the bolts in there. It's not going to like lift up and flop around or anything like that. These things are machined so nice that I mean, I can pretty much pull on that all the way around. It's not going to unseat that bead. Don't want to get crazy with it. But what I'll do when I'm assembling one of these, I'll go ahead and I'll put one in, and then I'll put the opposite one, which I don't even know where I started. This guy right here. So I'll put one across, and then this will bring me to my next thing I'm going to point out here. I assume this is something by design. So once you've got this together, all of these bolts look the same. You have no way of knowing which one are your functional ones and which are your non-functional just by looking at them, because you can't tell which are threaded and which aren't. But what you'll find is one of these spokes, or two of these opposite spokes, are actually lined up with two of the lug nut holes, and if you follow that up, that is a functional bolt. So you got a functional bolt there, and then skip 3 functional, skip 3 functional. So that's how you can easily tell where your functional bolts are. If you ever need to take this back apart, change foams, different tires, whatever, you don't have to just go by trial and error and start removing bolts. There is an actual way to tell which are which. So then once the front's together, I just repeat the same thing on the back. The big difference with the back, once you get it in that groove there, and a lot of times I'll use like this little cup, and I'll set it on top of there, and then it kind of helps me you know, it puts pressure on the wheel while I'm trying to put that bead in there. But once you get the bead set in there, you put your back ring on, and your back ring just has 6 bolts just like the front. But there's only, I mean, doesn't matter which way it goes on. But yeah, other than that, that's pretty much it. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish this up. I just wanted to touch on that while I was putting it together. And there is our almost completed wheel. One thing that I don't think I talked about yet is the scale lug nuts. I know I talked about the scale brake rotors that I'm going to use from SSD, but as far as the lug nuts, those are also an SSD piece. And get that to focus in. So it is a M2.5 by 8, and they come in these little packs. You get 30 of them in a pack. And I've used these because, nothing against the ones from Locked Up RC. I know they sell them as well, but I've been using these long before I ever had any Locked Up RC wheels. And I think they are a little bit cheaper, and I've never had a problem with them, and I have a bunch of them around. So I just went ahead and stuck with this. And the way this works, instead of having a dedicated driver like the Locked Up RC stuff, you just get this little socket from SSD that goes on your regular driver, and then your scale hardware fits in there. And let's see, yep. So this guy here, just line up our brake rotor, and just like any other SLW compatible hub, you just got 6 of these small scale screws, and we can get that to line up. There we go. And there is the last wheel installed on the chassis. Man, they're some good looking wheels. And I will tell you, I don't know how it's going to come across in the video, but they are pretty much the exact same color as the shocks. Not so much as the motor. The motor is a completely unique kind of a purple, but they definitely match the shocks. So that's kind of cool. And I will point out that now that the wheels are all assembled, there is definitely a difference in the foams, or inserts, I guess. I don't really know if you call these things foams or not. I'm pretty confident in saying that the Air Downs are definitely the stiffer foam. And they seem to have a little more curvature to them. So I guess what the deal is that maybe the wider, you know, or taller filter media stuff that goes in there just fills out the tire a lot more. Which, like I said, looking at them, if you held the closed cell foams and everything side to side, I kind of would have thought that the Air Downs would be the softer ones. So the Air Downs in the rear are my firmer foams. Let's say, you know, kind of like a medium foam, and then a soft foam in the front, which is the Ultra Air Down insert. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and do one little other teaser. I was gonna save body stuff for a whole nother video, but I will say I went back and forth on what body to use on this. I actually bought a couple different ones. I bought a cliffhanger body, which I've already got one truck with a cliffhanger body up there. I'll definitely use it on something. I've got a couple other chassis kits I still need to build, so I'll have something I'm going to use that cliffhanger on, but it's not going to be this. I looked at, you know, like the creep body, and I'm not really into the cab only thing. So I was looking at some different truck bodies, you know, Toyota SR5 body, stuff like that. And what I ended up on was I think they call it the Coyote Grande, maybe, is what it's called. And I actually went out and I bought a clear body for this thing. And then, as dumb luck would have it, I bought another truck. I bought a Red Cat Ascent used on the marketplace, and this body came as part of the deal. And as you can see under there, it's actually got some extra holes in it, so that's why there are stickers on the roof. And then I added some little Holmes Hobby stickers to cover up those holes in the front. And I'm going to go ahead and run this body, since like I said, it came as part of the deal. I've got it. I'm going to run it right now, and I do believe ultimately I will end up with that clear Coyote body that I have going on this truck. But I need to decide on a paint scheme. That was part of my deal, is I really want to get out and run this thing, but I'm not ready to paint that body yet because I really don't know what kind of paint scheme I want to go with. I was thinking something like a gunmetal gray and purple, but I really want to learn how to airbrush. So I think I'm going to hold off on running that other body. I'm going to go ahead and tear this one up because no big loss. Not in love with the color by any means, but I can go ahead and tear this thing up, and while I'm learning to maybe airbrush and coming up with a design scheme and get the other body painted, and then I can swap them out. I did play with the body mount some to get it down about as low as I can, and I just covered up that that NegativeG rear bumper there. It basically just, it touches the bumper. I'll try to show this here, but it pretty much touches the bumper and back, and I got about as low as it can go in the front. The body mounts just absolutely will not go any lower with this style of mount. Now I could always go to a different style of mount if I wanted to, maybe something that attaches to the shock tower or something, but I'm gonna say that's probably low enough for my liking for right now. I do like the body nice and low, but I don't think I could really get it any lower. It'd hang down past the sliders, and I'd be cutting the sides of the body off, and then it just gets to looking really unrealistic to me when people start angle cutting the bodies and, you know, making them super short. And I do believe, I'd have to check the rules, they may have changed the rules for 2024, but I know at one time, at least in class 2, the body had to be, I don't know, 4.5 inches or 4.25 inches, something like that. I'd have to check it. But it did have to be a certain height, so if you go chopping your body, you can run into being outside of the rule set. Man, I tell you what, even with the green, it looks pretty damn cool. I ain't gonna lie. I think that is a really neat body. I can't really say that I've seen anybody else locally running one, although I'm sure they are. I'm sure I'm not the only one, but I haven't seen a bunch of these out on the trails yet. It's not like the Power Wagon bodies. You go out on a trail run and there's 20 guys with the same Power Wagon body, so that's kind of what I wanted to avoid. I'm sure at some point everybody will be running these because there's only a few nice comp cut bodies out there, but a lot of people seem to like the trucks or the cab onlys, so I went with the SUV style. Yeah, man, I think that's cool. I am super excited to get it out on the rocks, and savvy viewers may notice, as we talked about the directional tires, I have one tire that's pointed the wrong direction, so I'm going to have to remount that guy, and all the other 3 are pointed the same direction. And while I do know that these Team Ottsix Voodoo KLRs are directional, I don't know what direction they're supposed to go because there are no arrows. And maybe it's just one of those things that you try it out and see what works. So I kind of went with the point the lugs kind of arrow, I guess, pattern forward. I don't know what else to call that. I'm going to start off with that, and I might flip them around and see which way they perform better. I don't think there's a right way or a wrong way. I think there's just the way it works. So for tonight, I'm going to call that good. And I thank anybody that came in and sat through this and watched the whole thing. And hopefully you'll come back next time. I'd like to think that maybe next time I make a video on this truck, it'll be out on the rocks and running. Or I might move on to another project for now. We'll just kind of see what time and weather dictates. And you know, it's winter here in Kansas City, and we just got over a bit of a snowstorm. And the trails were muddy this last weekend, so I didn't get out and do anything, and we'll see how it goes in the future. So again, for now, I'm going to call that good night. I thank you for coming by, and remember not to take this stuff too serious. It's just toy trucks after all.